It turns out making these videos is so much work. Yep, that's it. I made 2 videos and they did pretty well, I guess by early vlogging standards. But I didn't realize how much work it would go into actually making a series. So I kind of sat back and contemplated for a little bit, how many videos do I want to post in a month? What kind of content do I want to create and how much do I really want to do this? Most of that conversation with myself was actually my wife yelling at me about doing less. So we've decided on 1 video per week, starting this week, and I hope you guys enjoy. I asked, and you guys responded. I asked what kind of content you wanted to see, and the resounding answer was what I'm going to call white belt problems. Turns out, being a white belt really, really sucks. There are about 1 million different problems that nobody really has a good answer for you on, and you're constantly getting the shit kicked out of you. It's kind of a belittling place to be. I would agree with that. I did my best, and I squeezed them into 4 categories to make it a little bit more digestible for you. In advance, I know these categories aren't perfect. And as far as these white belt problems go, like I said, there's so many of them. A lot of them deserve their own video, and someday they'll probably get them. But for now, I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet and answer all the questions that you guys had. The first category is what I call philosophical dilemmas. These are things that everybody runs into at the beginning. Nobody really knows how to handle at first, but they can be a huge, huge stressor on your jiu-jitsu and your jiu-jitsu mental health, and nobody wants that. The first philosophical dilemma is the concept of thinking that you're improving and then things not going your way and feeling like you are not improving. Let me make this one short and sweet. You're always improving. As long as you're showing up for jiu-jitsu class, you're gonna get better. So here's the deal. The first thing that you need to identify is, why do you feel like you're not improving? Is it because rolling's not going your way? Is it because there's techniques that you just don't understand or you can't wrap your head around? Contingent on what the answer to that question is how I'll address it. So I guess I'll go through both. If you're feeling this way because rolling's not going your way, good. I mean, if rolling is going your way every single time, you're probably not learning anything. You're probably not taking any chances and you're probably not getting any better. For me, half the point of rolling is playing around and figuring out what you're really strong at and what you're really weak at and addressing what your weaknesses are. So in reality, if rolling's not going your way, that's a really, really good thing. It actually means that you are learning. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors that go into it too, but keep in mind that rolling isn't about winning. And if your issue is that you're not able to understand concepts or positions or submissions and you can't really wrap your head around them, then that's a conversation that you need to have with your instructor. Ask them, hey, what am I missing here? Go through it step by step. Take notes. Jiu-jitsu is no different than any other subject that you learn. Great note taking is something that's incredibly important and helps you break things down. If you can take a move, a position, or concept and take it step by step by step and grasp those steps as opposed to the concept as a whole, it'll make your game so much better and so much tighter. So talk to your professor about that. I promise he or she won't bite. They might. I have no control over that, so don't come back on me about that shit. Another one of the questions that I got was, how do I piece it all together? Some instructors will teach you a series of moves that are just cool and they're like, hey, try fitting these into your game. Some instructors will actually take it, position by position and say, hey, here are your options from this position to this position, and here's how you kind of flow seamlessly between the two of them. If you're that latter situation, that's perfect. Having an instructor that can teach you how to put all these different concepts and ideas together is insanely helpful. If you're somebody who has one of those instructors that's just kind of teaching you like
a collection of moves. Unfortunately, at that point, it's kind of your job to do one of two things. You can go to your instructor and you can get clarification and you can get guidance on how you piece all of these together, or you have to go and do some extracurricular studying and figure out for yourself how all of these things are interchangeable and how they work together. What's great about it is that we live in 2020. The exchange of information is incredible. You have more than enough opportunity to connect with somebody that's going to help you put these dots together. So just make sure that you're asking questions. And I know that nobody wants to be that annoying white belt asking a million questions, but it's in the best interest of your jiu-jitsu for you to be that person. The next category for the philosophical dilemmas is the idea of just getting your ass kicked all the time. You know, it's something that not everybody enjoys, but how do you move past it? How do you grow past it? And I think the answer to that is first addressing the fact that you're gonna lose sometimes. Sometimes you're gonna lose often. And either one of those options is perfectly okay. Because the important thing to remember when you're getting smashed by somebody else is that's a learning opportunity for you to make sure that that never happens again. So if you feel like you're being smashed a lot and you feel like you are getting, you're just getting really beat down, the real big thing to do is say, okay, when I'm in these situations, what can I do different to address these problems? Because just like Einstein said, if you're doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results, that's insanity. And you know, the same thing applies to jiu-jitsu. If you're in bottom side control and you're just laying there like a dead fish and you're getting, you know, this guy or this girl's elbow just smashed into your face and it's uncomfortable and then you're in knee on belly and it's not a good time, start playing around. Figure out how to beat it. Figure out how to stop those things. Tap early, tap often. You know, kind of take it to the workshop and figure out what it is exactly about that situation that's giving you such a hard time. And I've already said this a few times in this video, and I'll probably say it a few more times. Talk to your instructor. They have the answers. If they don't have the answers, go on a forum, message me. End of the story. Make sure you're workshopping what things you need to work on. Ask upper belts, ask other lower belts. You know, it's not like we're all hoarding information for ourselves. Generally speaking, in jiu-jitsu, there's a wide collection of information available to everybody, paid and free content both. So take advantage of that. That's really the only thing I can tell you is ask questions, workshop it, and do your research. Because those things will help you out so much. But feel free to reach out to somebody. Another great question that I got about this category is how do you circumnavigate feeling claustrophobic? The reality is that we are raised from a very young age to kind of respect our own bubble and other people's bubbles. Jiu-jitsu kind of kills that. The whole point of jiu-jitsu is to get as close as you can to somebody, control that space, control how they're able to move. And sometimes there's some people that can't quite handle being on the receiving end of that. And I was one of those people at one point. And the best advice that I can give about that is really all about learn how to breathe. Learn how to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations and become friends with it. Because I know that it's scary having somebody, especially if they're substantially larger than you, but having somebody on top of you, you know, putting all of their weight, all of their pressure into you in moves that are designed to be uncomfortable. But there's a lot to be said about just taking that moment, pausing, taking that deep breath, and focus on continuing to breathe. If you're able to do that, it'll substantially help with those situations. Because at the end of the day, one thing that you need to remember is that at any point in time, you can tap. Early on in your white belt game, there's no shame in tapping to pressure. That's something that comes with time. Like being able to be pressured really, really hard and feel like your jaw's being broken and not tap, that comes with experience. That comes with knowing like, hey, I've been here a million times before. I know that he's not gonna break anything. I know that this just sucks, and that's fine. But early on in your white belt, you don't have that knowledge. You don't have that experience, and it's uncomfortable and it hurts and you want out of it. So get out of it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just next time that you're there, try to last a little bit longer. You know, take a few extra breaths, try to realize, hey, you know, yeah, I'm in a bad spot, but it's not the end of the world. And see how that works out for you. That's what I did. I can't say that is going to work for everybody, but it might be helpful. The third category I was asked about is what I'll kind of refer to as jiu-jitsu etiquette. The two different ideas there that I was asked a lot about was what are the official rules on asking upper belts to roll? And then kind of an offshoot of that first one, what happens if I want to turn down a roll? I found both of these to be really interesting questions. So let's talk about asking upper belts to roll. Some places are really against it. Some places find that to be a huge insult. I don't really buy that. I am all for the free exchange of ideas and techniques. Case in point, I'm a purple belt, and I think that there's an expectation there that as a purple belt, I should automatically be better and more knowledgeable than every blue belt and every white belt. And I would say that for the most part, that's accurate. I think that there's understandings that I have of positions and techniques and pressure that a blue belt doesn't have or a white belt doesn't have, just as a brown belt and a black belt has understandings about those exact same things, just on a deeper level. You know, there's levels to this. That being said, I feel like I can learn from everybody, and I have learned a ton about my own jiu-jitsu game by them, approaching me saying, "Hey, do you want to roll?" Because at that point, they're getting value because they're getting my experience and my knowledge passed on to them, and I'm getting their experience and their knowledge passed on to me just by experiencing, what that feels like. And I think that's a really big deal in jiu-jitsu, and the fact that so many people are against lower belts asking upper belts to roll, it's asinine to me. Now, that being said, there's a big difference between asking somebody politely to roll and saying, "Hey, let's fight." Those are two very different things. But as far as like asking to roll and stuff like that, I think that as a lower belt, that's your obligation. I think that that's your job. If your job is a student and to learn as much as possible, it only makes sense that you go to the people who know the most. If I were you, I wouldn't worry about it. Obviously, check with your instructor, but it doesn't stress me out at all.
Now, I had a really interesting question posed to me as far as women turning down roles with other training partners, typically men. So I'm going to address this from the perspective of answering that specific question, and then kind of how it applies to all jiu-jitsu and all jiu-jitsu practitioners. So the question that was posed was, as a female, is it okay to turn down roles from male training partners that I worry will hurt me, or I worry will go really hard on me, etc., etc.? And I think that my answer to that is, yeah, you're a grown-ass woman. If you think that you are not safe rolling with somebody, absolutely turn it down. That being said, my perspective on turning down roles has always been that a lot of problems can be solved with conversation. And if you feel like there's a particular training partner that is going too hard on you, I think what a lot of us fall into the trap of is we get affronted by somebody and the role doesn't go how we want it to, and we take it a little bit personally, and we go to our teammates or we go to our professor and say, "Hey, this is happening, I'm not comfortable," and it kind of festers and becomes a bigger problem there, right? And so my school of thought has always been that if I am training or rolling with somebody who's going a little bit too hard, I will just say, "Hey, take it down a notch, we're not trying to kill each other or anything here." And I'll address it with them and be like, and after the roll, I'll be like, "Hey, the reason I said, take it down is because, you're doing a lot of this stuff and I'm not feeling too safe," or anything like that. And have that conversation, because I find that most reasonable people will respond well to that and they'll address it. After that point, if they don't, then by all means, go to your teammates, go to your professor, have one of them address it, because it's a problem that needs to be taken care of. Because chances are, if they're doing it to you, they're probably doing it to everybody. So as a female trying to protect yourself, always feel free to turn down a role, but also be an adult and have that conversation. Now, how this applies to everybody else, as far as whatever gender you are or whatever size you are, same thing. Talk to them. Have that conversation of, "Hey, I've noticed that when we roll, A, B, and C happens. It needs to stop. Otherwise, I'm not going to roll with you anymore." If they respond well to it, great. No harm, no foul. If they want to fight you on it, then hey, whatever. You just don't have to roll with them ever again. And that's entirely fine, because at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu isn't a life or death situation, right? It's a service that you're paying for. It's the same as having a subscription to anything. If you're not getting what you want out of it, it's within your control to change that. And I'm not saying somebody's beating you up, cancel your membership. I'm saying somebody's beating you up, point it out, and have it fixed, whether that's by you or by the instructor. And I hope that's helpful. The final category is one that a lot of upper belts will kind of laugh at, because you already know exactly what the deal is. I'm going to read this off of the list, so bear with me for a second. The last category is what I call acquirable skills. And so it includes things like not spazzing, using too much strength, not even knowing what to do in the first place, and then learning jiu-jitsu specific movements. So like the upa, the shrimping, technical stand-up, stuff like that. All of these things, I'll address all of them and then one in particular. all of these things are time-based. If you show up with any regularity at all, on a long enough timeline, all of these issues will be addressed. One question that stands out for me out of these was, it actually came from my friend who we affectionately in the gym call Scary Terry. And he says that he feels like he doesn't know what to do ever. And that's something that I'm terribly familiar with. I think that to some level that never really goes away. And to me, that's what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu, is that it's this perpetual learning experience. And the only thing that helps you learn is time on the mat and, personal reflection. And I think that feeling of not knowing what you're doing is one of the more powerful tools that you have, because that causes that inner reflection. It causes you to look inside and say, okay, all of these things weren't working. Why weren't they working? What do I not understand? And that's what encourages you to go out and find that information. So my best advice, if you're worried about, feeling like you don't know what you're doing, or that you have little to no idea, keep showing up, keep practicing. If you only know one or two moves, practice those one or two moves. Because every night as you're showing up to class, and every class you're learning new techniques, you're just constantly adding this Swiss Army knife of techniques. And when you are a white belt, that Swiss Army knife is going to have this tiny little knife and maybe that little corkscrew. And then you become a blue belt, and you're going to have 6 or 7 multi-tools. You become a purple belt, you're going to have like a dozen, and so on and so forth. It just keeps on growing, and it keeps on growing. You want that. You want that feeling of not knowing what you're doing, because you're always looking to improve that Swiss Army knife that is your jiu-jitsu technique. So just keep showing up, keep working on these things, and don't learn something and forget it. Learn something, drill it, and apply. Always work on applying whatever it is that you learn. Because just like many other things in life, you're going to best learn through repetition. So get those reps. If you learn something, work it and roll in that. That's one thing that I always do, is I always try to, as soon as I learn a technique, I try to apply it in roll. I hope these things were helpful for you. I know that it was a lot of information. I know that at times it sounds like I ramble. And you know what? This channel's new. I'm still trying to figure out what my voice is and what I'm trying to say. So please keep on letting me know what you guys want to see and what I can do better. I certainly appreciate everybody who's been liking the videos, sharing the videos, commenting on the videos. Keep it going. Because once again, this is an us thing. It's not just me. I want this to be something that betters the jiu-jitsu community. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm always open to hear from you. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit me up here on YouTube in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that crap. I don't know what any of it means. I'm old. But I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care.